Ooh, it's finally here! I'm really feeling it! Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun, Dai here. Today I'm proud to present the lore of one of my favorite games, Xenoblade Chronicles. Now with the release of Definitive Edition, I can bring you this lore in all its HD glory. Monolith Soft hands down makes the best JRPGs out there, and if this goes well, I hope to cover the other Xenoblade titles, and even the classic Xenogears and Saga titles. For today, however, it's time to get stuck in! A special thanks goes out to the brilliant fans who translated the Xenoblade Secret Files book into English. It's helped clarify and supplement much of what I wanted to cover, and you can find a link to the book in the description. Secret Files is a fun read, and even includes a special side chapter not featured in the game. Without further ado, let's dive in. The worlds of Xenoblades 1 and 2 emerge from the same dramatic event. Humanity discovers a mysterious cross-like monolith near Africa during the 21st century. In fact, this is the origin of most all Monolith Soft's games, with the mysterious device itself having different names and powers. For our purpose, the device is called the Conduit, and initial research efforts discover it to be able to connect dimensions. Considered dangerous, scientists continue their research above Earth's surface in orbital stations. The conduit itself is stored within the first low-orbit station, Radamanthus, protected from organizations coveting its power for themselves. As war ravages the Earth, a scientist, Klaus, hopes to be mankind's salvation, to improve its sorry state through the creation of a new world. An attack on the orbit station pushes Klaus to act, using the conduit to conduct a phase transition experiment. His colleague, a scientist named Galea, tries to restrain Klaus's aggression, knowing full well the conduit's potential. Regardless, Klaus activates it, surrounding the planet in a ring of energy from which various dimensional portals appear. These portals consume most of the planet's population, swallowing Galea and half of Klaus's body to create an entirely new universe. The remaining half of Klaus survives, going on to establish the world of Xenoblade 2. And yet, we will follow the new universe's development. Alvis, the computer system regulating the phase transition experiment, becomes the supreme consciousness and basis of this new world. He calls himself Monado, the willpower of those that wish to live in the face of adversity. He exists as universal providence, granting considerable power to strong wills that resonate with the world's lifeblood, ether. Practically speaking, he fosters wills upon which he can bestow godly power. This power, while great, is not unlimited. Still, it is certainly awesome, capable of shaping the world and creating life. The two living components of this world, Klaus and Galea, reincarnate as the gods Zanza and Meynith, bestowed with colossal titan bodies known as the Bionis and Mechon respectively. The two titans stand tall, with the rest of the world consisting of only an endless sea and sky. Both Zanza and Meynith, as gods of this new world, possess swords also called the Monado. Meynith's, however, is seldom used, leading most to believe there is only one such sword. The two gods begin to create life upon their bodies. From the Bionis, the primordial Telethia are born. They are simple creatures with regenerative abilities. While they can read minds, they lack their own mental prowess. To compensate for this, Zanza grants some of the Telethia intelligence, giving rise to two new races, the Giants and the winged High Entia. Among them, the High Entia form their own civilization, developing advanced technology and manipulating ether with ease. Despite this, they are the victims of Zanza's will. If needed, the High Entia can be exposed to dense concentrations of ether, which will transform them back into primitive Telethia. Eventually, the High Entia settle in the upper regions of Bionis, constructing their imperial capital, the floating city of Alcamoth, among the Aerith Sea. Over time, as the Giants, Telethia, and High Entia gather higher up the Bionis, they make way for an entire ecosystem to form across the Titan's body. Among these various species are two intelligent races, the human-like Homs and the rotund Nopon. While these two races lack the technological prowess of the High Entia, they carve out their own existence on Bionis. The Nopon protect themselves from monsters, building a large village in the trees of Machna Forest, while the Homs develop up to 10 distinct colonies, repurposing machinery left behind by the ancient High Entia. To power these colonies, the Homs excavate and refine condensed ether crystals, and harness their power through catalysts like gems and bullets. At the same time, on the other Titan, Mechon, the goddess Meynith gives birth to an inorganic race of beings, the Machina. They too develop an advanced culture and construct a capital city, Agniratha, in the Mechonis' center. There, united under their leader Mechon, they worship Lady Meyneth as their benevolent creator. For a time, the Bionis and Mechonis coexist peacefully, allowing Mecho's son Egil to befriend a giant, Arglus, atop the Bionis' shoulder. They explore the vast world around them and wonder if anything lies beyond the oceans that seem to continue without end. However, just as Klaus once lost faith in humanity, Zanza begins to lose faith in his own creations. For him to survive, the Bionis needs to continually reabsorb the ether of the life it births. If his children leave, the Bionis will ultimately die. Thus, as his denizens contemplate life beyond the Bionis, Zanza grows lonely and fearful that they've forgotten about him. He formulates a plan to bring about destruction and rebirth, not only to ensure that life on Bionis stays on Bionis, but also so that Zanza can establish himself as the world's only god. After an era of peace, Zanza begins his plan when the giant Arglus discovers the Bionis' Monado. He takes control of Arglus, in turn leading Bionis to attack Mechonis. War breaks out between both titans as they clash with swords among the vast sea. Even the beings atop their bodies fight each other. Arglus, compelled by Zanza, ravages the Machina and their automated servants, the Mechon, while Telethia invade Agniratha. The vast majority of Machina are wiped out, with a handful like Mechon and his children Egil and Vinea being among the few survivors. Despite this, Lady Meyneth, controlling the Mechonis, manages to inflict a deep wound on the Bionis, weakening Zanza considerably. The High Entia take this chance to seal Zanza away. The giant Arglus is locked up on Prison Island, and Zanza's soul, kept within the Monado, is hidden away inside the High Entia's Ose Tower. Both titans sink into a deep sleep, frozen mid-fight with the Mechonis' sword serving as a bridge between the two. The Mechonis' other arm rests among the water below. After this colossal fight, both Zanza and Meyneth go silent, waiting to recover their strength. As Meyneth sleeps, the Machina are left on their own, unsure of how to proceed. Egil seeks vengeance on the Bionis, and begins to form a massive army of Mechon to ravage its people. While Meyneth would prefer he find peace, Egil cannot let go of his wrath, and provokes more conflict. He attacks any Machina that oppose him, forcing his own father Mechon and others to flee and take refuge in the fallen arm. His sister Vinea is one of the few to remain, reluctantly watching as Egil makes plans to deprive the Bionis of its ether. Of course, Zanza has not given up. While his soul and vessel remain separated, he communicates with those who will be his disciples, promising them near immortality. First, there is the High Entia Lorithia. She is tasked with leading the High Entia's Ministry of Research, developing new weapons for her people. This is ironic, considering that by serving Zanza, she is effectively betraying the High Entia. Second, there is the giant Dixon, who takes the form of a Homs. He is tasked with introducing Lorithia's High Entia technology to the Homs. Third, there is Alvis. Unbeknownst to all but himself, Alvis, the ex-computer system and supervisor of the world's providence, takes the form of a Homs as his avatar and watching over the world. He appears to help Zanza, but is primarily an observer of the flow of time, offering his guidance to the High Entia as a seer. The three of them are considered Zanza's trinity of disciples. Though they rarely work in tandem, they hope to bring about Zanza's resurrection and continue with his ambition to wipe all life on Bionis to restore it anew. Over the span of millennia, Egil dispatches Mechon to attack the Bionis and establish bases to extract ether. Zanza's disciples live on, acting to oppose Egil's efforts while preparing for Zanza's awakening. The history of this conflict is preserved exclusively within the legends of the High Entia and the records in Agniratha, leaving much of the Bionis' people to see the Mechon as nothing more than invading monsters. Following the High Entia's decision to oppose Zanza during the war, their ancestors hope to free themselves from his control. The Imperial family, who know of their potential to transform back into Telethia, aim to avert this fate. They hope to, over generations, eradicate the genetic legacy that ties them to the Telethia by breeding with Homs. Sadly, this plan of action is not unanimous. One faction of the High Entia, the Bionite Order, considers this practice taboo and employs assassins to ensure the purity of the Imperial bloodline. Thus, emperors are forced to keep two consorts, one to bear a pureblood child, and another of Homs blood to bear the High Entia's future heir to raise in secrecy. Eventually, the High Entia's 47th ruler, Emperor Lumion, puts an end to the Order, or rather tries to. The Order, thought to have been disbanded, survives by lurking in the shadows, making it unsafe for High Entia of Homs blood to reveal themselves. Thankfully, these efforts pay off when a child is born to Emperor Saurian and his human concubine. This girl, Melia, has an 80% integration with Hom's genetics and can truly free the High Entia of their Telethia origin. Saurian's pureblood wife, first consort Umea, however, gifts him a son named Callian. Sharing the Bionite Order's old sentiments, Umea plots to sabotage Melia's chances of ascending the throne, and yet she is a hypocrite. While she indeed birthed Prince Callian, Umea also bedded one of the half-bloods she actively opposes, resulting in another half-blood child named Tyrea. Thus, both Melia and Tyrea are raised in secret, one to be the High Entia's hope, and the other to be the next leader of the Bionite Order. Denied any chance of claiming the throne, Tyrea resents Melia and follows her mother's orders to sabotage Melia's inheritance. The two girls, divided by internal conspiracy, live isolated from each other until the youthful age of around 74. The Homs, on the other hand, live much shorter lives, which is made all the more tragic when the Mechon begin to invade their homes. The High Entia, safe within their defenses at Alcamoth, do nothing as 8 of the 10 Homs colonies are overrun by Mechon attacks. Seeking a means of defeating the Mechon, who continue to slaughter and devour their people, the Homs learn of the Monado, no doubt thanks to Dixon. The Homs researching the Monado form an expedition team and find the blade on Valak Mountain. 2 of the researchers bring along their 4-year-old son, a boy named Shulk. Zanza makes his first move toward resurrection by sapping the ether from the expedition team, killing them all instantly. He then declares Shulk to be his new vessel, and remains dormant inside of the boy until a chance to revive emerges. Dixon takes both the Monado and Shulk to Colony 9, serving as Shulk's mentor in science and swordsmanship. Even with the Monado in Holmes' possession, very few are capable of actually wielding it. Various soldiers from the Holmes Defense Force are tested as candidates, including 2 men named Dunban and Mumkar. Between them, Dunban is considered to be the most compatible, relegating Mumkar to a supportive role on the front lines. While this is for the sake of protecting their entire species, Mumkar takes it personally and resents Dunban while developing an inferiority complex. Regardless, Dunban leads the charge, fighting against the Mechon menace that killed his parents. The Monado proves effective, allowing the Homs forces to push through to the Mechon fortress at Sword Valley. There, a major battle takes place. Dunban, Dixon, and Mumkar cut their way through the Mechon, risking their lives to finally establish peace. This pressure proves too much for Mumkar, however, who goes AWOL to save himself. Ironically, he was safer at Dunban's side, as a swarm of Mechons surround and abduct him. Even without Mumkar's help, Dunban leads the Homs to victory in the fight, but extensive use of the Monado renders his right arm too injured to fight, or so much as lift a spoon. He is left bedridden, in the same bed his parents once used, depending on his beloved sister Fiora for aid. Thankfully, it appears that his effort is not in vain, as peace is restored to Colony 9 for a time. Colony 9 itself is located on the Bionis' Calf, surrounded by 3 anti-air batteries that protect the airspace from falling Mechon debris. Shulk lives there under Dixon's tutelage, spending his days building machinery in the colony's weapon development lab, alongside researching the Monado. His best friend Ryan is a member of the Defense Force, more proud of his red hair and robust body than his academic prowess. In fact, Ryan claims to have forgotten anything he learned in school, things most Homs would consider common knowledge, but makes up for it with his loyalty and strength when wielding defensive weapons called drivers. The 2 of them also live alongside Fiora. In particular, Shulk and Fiora are romantically interested, but struggle to vocalize their feelings. As such, they've remained platonic up to the age of 18. Sometimes Shulk seems more invested in the Monado and his machines than in the love of his life, much to her frustration. For instance, when Ryan grabs the Monado and loses control, he swings the blade right into Fiora. While this would normally be horrible, Shulk knows that the Monado isn't capable of hurting Homs. What he doesn't know is that, because he is Zanza's vessel, he is especially compatible with the Monado, which gives him visions of the future. Shulk doesn't understand the purpose of his visions, keeping them to himself while continuing his research. The fact that the Monado can't hurt Homs was discovered in the Battle of Sword Valley, and word of this made its way to Egil. Devising a way to subvert the Monado's destructive might, he gets the idea to infuse Mechon with human pilots in their blood. Doing so creates a series of Mechon, the Faces, that are impervious to the Monado's attacks. From then on, the Mechon not only kill or eat the Homs, but also capture them to be implanted into Face Mechon. While Colony 9 seems to be at peace, Colony 6 is invaded by one of these faced Mechon, named Zord. Originally, Zord was a skilled Homs mechanic, but after being killed by the Mechon, his brain and internal organs were implanted into a face Mechon and forced to attack the colony. Those in defense of Colony 6 include Sharla, a Defense Force medic, her fiancé Egil, her little brother Juju, and their colonel Otharon. While valiant, the Defense Force fails to repel Zord's attack, and the colony is taken. Egil and Otharon put themselves in danger to ensure that Sharla, Juju, and the other survivors have time to evacuate as their home goes up in flames. Shortly thereafter, a similar invasion is launched on Shulk's colony, led by a Mechon known as Metalface. In truth, Metalface is none other than Mumkar, who, after being abducted by the Mechon, was outfitted with a powerful body. With this new strength, Mumkar is more than happy to betray his own species, leading the charge to devastate Colony 9. As the colony's alarm rings loud, Shulk and Rhine help Fiora escape while making their way to the Monado. Fiora's not about to abandon her friends, however, and discovers an unused mobile artillery to control. Dunban, despite his injuries, tries to wield the Monado once more, but proves to be too weak to control it. In desperation, Shulk draws the sword, and is surprisingly able to wield it better than Dunban ever could. This lets the group tear through most Mechon, but does nothing to thwart Metalface, who has Hom's blood running throughout. Even worse, Shulk receives another vision, one of Fiora dying from Metalface's claws. Sure enough, this vision comes true when Fiora emerges with her mobile artillery, sacrificing herself in a hopeless charge against the Mechon. Happy to torment Shulk, Metalface impales Fiora right in front of him. Taking advantage of what little damage Fiora did cause, Shulk is able to stab Metalface and wound him. The Mechon came to harvest humans for faces, and with that task done, Metalface flees with the rest of the Mechon, leaving Colony 9 devastated, but otherwise intact. Sadly, Fiora's body cannot be found among the artillery wreckage. Infuriated, Shulk and Rhine set out to seek revenge on the Mechon, and Dunban promises to join them after his strength returns. They head toward Colony 6, not knowing of its destruction. While venturing through the connecting Tephra cave, Shulk has yet another vision, one of Rhine being killed by a swarm of spiders. Feeling powerless after failing to save Fiora, Shulk does his best to save Rhine and discovers that, in fact, the future his visions predict can be changed. By unlocking more of the Monado's hidden powers, Shulk is able to defend Rhine from the spider's attack and fight back. Rhine then insists that Shulk be vocal about his visions, claiming that they're not a burden Shulk should have to handle on his own. They venture across the Bionis' leg and encounter Sharla's brother Juju. Upon saving the boy, they are led to a refugee camp where the survivors of Colony 6 have set up home. There, they meet Sharla, who informs them of their colony's destruction. While she desperately wants to reunite with her fiancé to reclaim the colony, she knows it's reckless to charge the enemy without a plan. Impatient, Juju steals a buggy to go off on his own, prompting Shulk to have yet another vision of Sharla and her brother being killed by a Mekon's tendrils. Not wanting to take the chance of losing Juju, Sharla joins Shulk and Rhine as they chase him down. With the confidence to defy fate, the party fights against the envisioned Mechon, and Shulk uses his visions to inform Rhine and Sharla of incoming attacks. Together, they destroy the Mechon and rescue Juju. Sadly, just as they find victory, they are met by the faced Mechon Zord, who abducts Juju and lures them toward a showdown in Colony 6's ether mine. In the mine, the group meets Otharon, who declares Egil went missing. Prompted by yet another vision, this time of Otharon falling into a molten ether pit, Shulk is weary to reach the mine's depths. Again, however, his friends promise to share the burden. As the group confronts Zord, Otharon follows the vision to a T, willing to risk his life plunging the faced Mechon into the ether below. Hope seems lost, but Shulk doesn't realize it's Rhine time. Otharon is saved at the last moment, bolstering Shulk's confidence that, alongside his friends, he can change the future. With Zord weakened by the ether, the party is able to slay him. That said, after bringing Juju to the surface, the party is attacked again by Metalface, who proceeds to taunt Shulk in his inability to harm the faces. Dixon and Dunban come to the rescue, using newly developed anti-Mechon weaponry. So long as Dunban uses his left arm, he can still fight. Still, they are no match for Metalface, and only escape with their lives because a Telethia distracts him. As the Monado struggles to pierce Metalface, Shulk receives an even more daunting vision, one featuring the High Entia on a dark tower. It seems Alvis, despite being a part of the Trinity, wants to see what Shulk is capable of, and watches from afar. After Dixon informs Shulk that the tower in his vision fits the description of Prison Island, the party, now joined by Dunban, aims to journey to the head of the Bionis. At the same time, in the Mechonis capital, Egil's sister Vinea does her best to end the conflict. She takes Fiora's harvested body and salvages as much as she can, resulting in a new body composed of 70% mechanized parts. This body is used as a vessel through which the wounded goddess Meyneth can act, being bound to the body with Mechonis' own Monado, kept just above Fiora's chest. Like other faced Mechon, Fiora's body is installed into a new model, the Face Nemesis. Vanea hopes that by reviving Meyneth in this fashion, the war can end. Fiora is forced to look on as her body and voice are controlled by Meyneth's will. While terrifying, Fiora begins to understand Meyneth's wish for peace and accepts her predicament. Melia, now age 88, is given the chance to prove her worth as a potential heir for the High Entia by being tasked with slaying a particularly vicious Telethia that escaped into the Nopon territory of Machna Forest. She brings along a team of bodyguards who give their life to protect her. As Shulk's party ventures through the forest, they find the fallen soldiers and notice that Melia is still alive, although wounded. Recognizing Melia from his prior vision, Shulk insists they find a way to heal her. Sharla explains that pure ether crystals are needed to heal Melia, so Shulk heads out to procure them. Along the way, he is attacked by smaller Telethia, who prove capable of reading Shulk's mind, rendering his visions useless. Alvis appears to help guide Shulk, showing him how to unlock even more of the Monado's potential. While vague and mysterious, it seems clear that Alvis wants Shulk to learn and succeed, not just because he's Zanza's vessel, but also because Shulk is developing his own will to live. In other words, his own Monado. With the ether crystals in tow, Shulk's party is able to revive Melia. While ultimately grateful, Melia is understandably startled to see a male Holmes right beside her. Reluctantly, Melia accepts the party's aid, teaming up with them to take down the rogue Telethia. First, however, they decide to regroup at the Nopon's home of Frontier Village, built above the trees to keep them safe from feral beasts. As part of governing the Nopon people, their chief selects on an annual basis someone to serve as their hero pawn, a protector they can idolize and confide in. One of the Nopon, Ricky, has accrued quite a bit of debt in the village as a result of his 11 children's voracious appetites. To pay off these debts, Ricky is declared Hero Pawn of the Year and tasked with accompanying Melia on her Telethia hunt. Despite his childish demeanor, Ricky is an adult who's obedient to his wife, Oka, and uses his overflowing confidence to carry him through dangerous situations. Ricky joins the party in fighting the Telethia, which his people refer to as a dino beast. During the fight, Shulk struggles from having his vision seen through by the Telethia, but he's nonetheless able to rely on his friends to distract the beast, while Melia charges enough ether to launch a blast so strong it erases all trace of their enemy. To show her gratitude, and as a sign of newborn friendship, Melia offers to escort the party to her capital of Alcamoth, where they can appeal to the Emperor for permission to access Prison Island. Problem is, the High Entia were the ones who originally sealed both the Monado and Arglis in the first place. Emperor Sarayan fears that Shulk and the Monado will bring about the High Entia's demise, and so he has the party taken captive until he can determine Shulk's intentions. Before that, however, Melia is to be named the Crown Princess. First Consort Umea hopes to sabotage this commencement, suggesting that Melia may better earn the people's trust if she undergoes the trial of the High Entia tomb. It's a dangerous ritual that hasn't been conducted in generations, but Melia declares herself up to the task. Of course, she doesn't realize Umea intends to have her daughter Tyrea assassinate her inside the tomb. Thankfully, Shulk foresees the attack in a vision, and earns Callion's blessing to interrupt the ritual for the sake of his sister's life. Melia enters the tomb and learns of the trial's true purpose, to evaluate the genetic legacy of the High Entia as they try to escape being turned into Telethia. Shulk's party follows after her, but Rhine triggers the tomb's defense system, forcing them to take a longer, more perilous route. Still, they are able to reach Melia just as Tyrea unleashes a Telethia upon her. The conspiracy is thwarted, and Melia is grateful to have such caring friends. After reporting the incident, Umea is stripped of her title. Tyrea is exiled, and Melia accepts her role as heir. The Emperor now trusts Shulk, but is reluctant to grant him access to Prison Island. Regardless, Shulk remains patient, that is, until the Mechon launch yet another assault, this time on the Aerith Sea and Alcamoth. Sarayan is forced to make a choice. He knows his people sealed Zanza for a reason, but he also knows that Prison Island has defenses capable of thwarting the assault. To protect his people, he heads to Prison Island on his own will, dispelling the barrier around it. Tragically, Shulk's vision of the encounter becomes clearer, revealing that the Emperor gets killed by Metalface. He warns Melia, and together the party reaches Prison Island and finds Zanza's giant body Arglis still sealed away. Zanza reveals that he possesses the power to remove the Monado seal that prevents it from hurting Holmes. Driven to avenge Fiora, Shulk allows Zanza to remove the Monado shackles, making it capable of damaging faced Mechon. Right on time, Metalface emerges and impales Zanza with his spear before proceeding to slay Sarayan as he protects Melia from the attack. Enraged, Shulk charges Metalface with the newly awakened Monado, but instead encounters the face Nemesis who pleads with him to stop. Undeterred, Shulk slashes the Nemesis, revealing Fiora to be its pilot. The party cries out to Fiora, but find that she appears to have forgotten them. Even though Arglus is dead, Zanza's voice still persists, implying that his soul is still alive. Fiora and Metalface retreat, declaring their mission a success, leaving Shulk in despair and confusion. Even so, knowing Fiora is still alive, the group decides to pursue her, and Melia joins to seek vengeance for her father. Callian takes charge of Alcamoth as the party follows Alvis through Valak Mountain. They stop at Ose Tower along the way, and eventually encounter Fiora at the base of the mountain. Shulk desperately tries to remind Fiora of her identity, but Mayneth is still in control. Mayneth wants to hear more from Shulk, but is interrupted when Metalface arrives, and finally reveals his identity as Mumkar. The bastard holds Fiora hostage and tries to subdue the party, but Melia manages to free her. Discovering that his old colleague betrayed him and killed his sister, Dunban fights Mumkar outside his faced Mechon, and nearly wins. To keep the conflict from escalating, however, Egil descends upon them in his own giant Mechon, gold-faced Yaldabaoth, reclaiming Fiora and Mumkar while inviting Shulk to face him on Mechonis. Determined to meet Egil's invitation, the party fights their way through Sword Valley, the literal sword of Mechonis, and find Mumkar once more just outside the Mechon base, Galahad Fortress. Mumkar aims to prove his worth by testing his strength against Shulk and Dunban, but once again finds himself on the losing end. Dunban prepares to slay his foe, only for Shulk to intervene for the sake of peace. Now that he knows the face Mechon have people inside, Shulk doesn't want to kill any Holmes. Dunban reluctantly accepts this logic and stands down. Mumkar, however, spits in the face of this mercy, charging forward, only to be run through by falling debris caused by his own attack. With the group set on rescuing Fiora, Shulk receives another vision, this time of Fiora and her face Nemesis plummeting from the fortress as it collapses. Shulk hopes to prevent this, but finds himself helpless while fighting Egil. Yaldabaoth uses a system called Apocrypha, which cancels out the Monado's power with opposing ether waves. As Fiora is forced to fight against her own friends and family, she and Mayneth try to resist Egil's control over them. Their collective desire to save Shulk allows them to break free and defy Egil. Mayneth releases waves from her Monado, which causes Galahad Fortress to explode into pieces. Her Mechon is badly damaged, and Shulk walks to the platform's edge in an effort to save her. As the fortress falls, the party is separated, finding themselves scattered among the Mechonis' fallen arm. With the destruction of Galahad Fortress, the Nopon, Holmes, and High Entia unite to launch an assault on Sword Valley. Shulk, however, is just glad to see that Fiora is still alive, her Mechon washed up on the beach. He brings her water and feeds it to her mouth to mouth, only to find that Fiora has not only regained control of her own body, but she is pleased to have had her first kiss. The two lovers express how happy they are to be reunited, with their affections finally acknowledged. Unfortunately, Fiora's body isn't functioning properly, and Shulk has to protect her from Mechon. Thankfully, it isn't long before the party finds each other and take refuge at the Machina's hidden village, where Mikol and the other Machina survivors fled to avoid Egil's campaign. The group is surprised to find that these Machina are quite friendly, welcoming the travelers onto their airship, the Junks. One of them, Lenata, is an engineer who diagnoses Fiora's condition. She explains that Fiora's body was made to be powered by the face Nemesis, and lacks a means of surviving away from it. Shulk manages to retrieve a piezoelectric unit, so that Lenata can update Fiora's body to function independently. Now that Fiora is alive and well, Shulk wonders how to proceed. Fiora explains to him Mayneth's goodwill and desire for peace. She helps him realize that without Mayneth's actions, she wouldn't be alive. Thus, when Mikol asks the party to kill Egil, Shulk decides to venture into the Mechonis, hoping to better understand Egil's motive for attacking Bionis. There, Egil contemplates why the face Nemesis defied him, and assumes it's because of lingering Hom's memories. To prevent this from happening again, he erases the memories from Jadeface, who happens to be piloted by Charlotte's fiancé, Gadol. One by one, Gadol's memories are sealed away, such that when the party enters the Mechonis, he is forced to attack his beloved as one of Egil's pawns. Charla recognizes Gadol's voice, but her cries fail to reach him, forcing the party to flee. They meet Egil's sister, Vinea, who leads them to Agniratha so they can see records of the Machina's downfall. They learn about how the Bionis attacked the Mechonis first, and that Egil is driven by revenge just as Shulk was. Vinea asks the party to convince her brother to stop his onslaught. They agree, but are once again targeted by Gedol. During the fight, Shulk begins to sense Gedol's attacks without seeing visions from the Monado, allowing him to notice that despite being an ace sniper, Gedol must be purposefully missing Sharla. Mayneth briefly takes command of Fiora's body and unleashes her Monado to restore Gedol's memories. Reunited at last, Sharla embraces her beloved and promises to come back for him after they confront Egil. Sadly, any attempts to sate Egil's anger prove futile. His rage is so strong that he feels that both Mayneth and Vinea have abandoned him. He declares himself the ruler of Mechonis and uses a tremendous amount of ether to cause the Mechonis to move once more. Thankfully, much of the united Bionis front senses this before it's too late. Alvis warns Callian to withdraw, since the Mechon of Sword Valley seem to be putting up a weak resistance. This effort minimalizes casualties. As the Mechonis moves, the capital begins to fall apart, forcing Shulk's party to try and escape. On the verge of death, they are rescued by Gedol, who sacrifices himself so that they can live. In his final moments, Gedol asks Rhine to look after Sharla. This buys Mayneth enough time to protect the group in an anti-gravity field until the Junks can pick them up. While Egil is able to control the Mechonis to an extent, it is not yet acclimated to him and comes to a halt, allowing the party to infiltrate the Mechonis core to confront him once again. On the way, Shulk experiences horrible pain in his arm, thought to be caused by resisting Egil's Apocrypha system. In truth, Zanza is preparing to awaken, and Shulk is feeling pain akin to how Dunban felt wielding the Monado. He lacks the time to wait and recover, however, as Egil controls the Mechonis into raising its sword to cleave into the Bionis at Valak Mountain. This time, Shulk comes prepared to kill Egil, resenting the Machina for all his prior suffering, convinced that Egil will never be able to forgive the Bionis or Zanza's disciples. As Shulk raises the Monado to finish Egil off, he hears a voice compelling him to proceed. Yet, Shulk ultimately spares Egil, sticking true to his desire for peace. He declares he will defeat Egil as many times as it takes for them to reach an understanding. This earnestness finally reaches Egil, who casts aside his hatred. Of course, this goes against everything Zanza and his disciples have been working toward. To stop the negotiations, Dixon shoots Shulk in the back, causing Zanza to emerge in a duplicate body that looks and sounds just like him. Yes, the Shulk who wielded the Monado to this point is cast aside like an empty husk. Dixon reveals his true intent of reviving Zanza, and Zanza reveals his goal to slay the Mechonis and reabsorb all life on Bionis. He confronts Mayneth in Fiora's body, calling her out to face him like a fellow god, and sure enough, Mayneth emerges from Fiora's chest in order to save the wounded Shulk. Using her own Monado in the form of two blades, she charges Zanza but cannot overpower him, her soul exposed. Mayneth fades away, using her last breath to pray for a better world. Zanza claims both Monados as his own, and begins his cycle of death and rebirth by flooding the Aerith Sea with mana, forcing all pure-blooded High Entia to revert to their original forms as Telethia. These Telethia comb the Bionis, compelled by Zanza to eradicate all living things. Reclaiming control of the Bionis, Zanza beheads the Mechonis and takes refuge on Prison Island as it sinks into the Bionis interior. The party takes Shulk back to the Junks and barely manages to escape while Egil stays behind so that everyone can evacuate. He places his hopes in Shulk to bring about the world Mayneth wanted, before he and Mechonis finally die. Dixon and Lorithia pursue the Junks as it evades Telethia attacks. Callian tries to help them, but also finds himself reverting to a Telethia. Before he completely loses himself, however, he charges Lorithia, causing enough of an explosion for the Junks to escape. Shulk remains unconscious while the Junks docks at Colony 6, which has now been rebuilt due to Juju's efforts. Just in case Shulk awakens, Linata uses Machina technology to forge a replica Monado, yet he does not respond. His consciousness stagnates, questioning whether everything he is and everything he's done have been pointless. Alvis's voice reaches out to him and declares Shulk needs to decide that for himself. Both Fiora and Melia have come to love Shulk dearly, and when they speak, Fiora reveals that without Mayneth's Monado to serve as her power source, she doesn't know how long her Mechon body can continue. Yet, she refuses to tell Shulk and hopes to fight by his side till the end. When Melia hears this, she decides not to interfere with Fiora's determination. The party thought Dixon died in their previous encounter, but now find him at Colony 6's doorstep with another swarm of Telethia. Without Shulk, the group continues to fight, but at best manages to hold the enemy off for a time. The surviving Holmes, Mechon, and High Entia of the colony resist their fate of becoming the Bionis' food. Together, they hold out long enough for Shulk to regain his sense of self and return to the battlefield with his Monado replica. Dixon is shocked to see that, even without Zanza's Monado, Shulk is still able to see the future and rival him in combat. Feeling the pressure, Dixon calls upon Alvis for help, and Alvis is revealed to be the third of Zanza's trinity. While he dispatches the Telethia to fight Shulk, it is less an overt attack and more of a chance for Shulk to prove his will to live. Shulk manages to repel Alvis and Dixon, giving the colony enough time to plan a final assault on Zanza in the Bionis' interior. Outside the colony, however, the party finds an injured Tyrea who, due to her mixed blood, is spared the fate of becoming a Telethia. Even as the party takes pity on her, Tyrea demonstrates hatred for Melia and sets out to put down her mother Yumea, who is most certainly transformed. Melia assists Tyrea in this endeavor, but is met with more hostility as Tyrea flies off. With no time to spare, Shulk and his party dive into the Bionis interior and make their way to the Bionis' heart, where they are attacked again by Lorithia. She survived Callion's attack by merging with him and has been awaiting Shulk's arrival to continue the fight. Yet, it is thanks to Callion that the group is able to defeat her. As the two of them begin to dissipate, Callion's soul reaches out to Melia and entrusts her with the future of the High Entia. Beyond the heart lies Prison Island, and atop it, Dixon awaits the party in his original giant form. He explains that he became Zanza's disciple in exchange for power, and performs his duty as Zanza's last line of defense. Despite this, it is not as though Dixon truly hates the time he spent with Dunban on Sword Valley, or his days raising Shulk. Thus, he uses this as an opportunity to test Shulk's strength, and secretly takes delight in being defeated by his own student. Shulk and Fiora step up as the hope of all life in their universe, and mortally wound Dixon such that he decides to back out and die in solitude. A portal from Prison Island takes Shulk and his friends to Zanza's lair, the cosmic memory space that Zanza inhabited at the world's inception. The party's ambition is clear: to defeat Zanza and create a world where the living are free to decide their own fate, unrestrained by the will of gods. They demonstrate their determination in combat, and while Zanza clings to his hubris, that none can beat him so long as he has both Monados, a third Monado emerges in Shulk's hands. This is the miracle that Alvis continued to watch over Shulk to see, for Providence to align with a new desire. With his own Monado in hand, Shulk strikes Zanza down, effectively becoming a new god. Certainly, this is more power than Shulk had bargained for. Even so, Alvis tells Shulk that to repair the world, which has become unstable, he must give rise to a new one. Thus, Shulk makes his decision, taking into account all of his experiences and the dreams of his friends, using his power as god to birth a world of endless possibility, free from gods. Ultimately, the world is stabilized, and divine providence vanishes in favor of mortality. The Bionis remains home to all of the war's survivors: the Holmes, Mechon, High Entia, Machina, and the Telethia. All of the life that Zanza wanted to consume is able to choose their own future, day by day. The people of Bionis begin rebuilding their homes, with Dunban and Vinea pairing up to lead their people. Linata expands her practice, researching a way to restore the mechanized Holmes to their human bodies. The fruit of this effort is Fiora, who has her old body regrown so she can live a normal life with Shulk. The two of them look on at the peaceful world they fought to create, optimistic about the future they'll walk toward together. A year passes, and while the recovery effort is strong, the surviving High Entia yearn to reclaim their capital, Alcamoth, which is floated out to the Bionis' shoulder. It was devastated by Zanza's awakening, but now faces a new threat. From a mysterious void, a creature called the Fog King emerges, violently attacking anyone who sets foot in the capital. The remaining High Entia soldiers launch numerous assaults on the creature, suffering grave casualties, and drama sparks when one of the Machina suggests they cut their losses and give up. The people on the Bionis' shoulder separate, unable to put their past behind them. Shulk, Melia, and Riki's children Kino and Nene fly the junks up to the shoulder and find themselves shipwrecked from a beam emanating from the dimensional rift. Together, the group meets with the two settlements and work to develop a countermeasure against the Fog King. Along their journey, they thwart the High Entia soldier Gelgar, who deems mixed bloods to be the supreme race, opposing the very research that can save their species. Melia reunites with Tyrea, and the two are at last able to reconcile their differences. Only by uniting the people of the Bionis' shoulder are Shulk and his friends able to devise a way to combat their seemingly immortal foe. In Alcamoth's courtyard, the party bravely fights the Fog King, bombarding it with attacks until it appears to fall, not once, but twice. Even this fails to stop the Fog King entirely. So long as the dimensional rift remains, it will continue to revive. As if sensing this, the Telethia, holding on to the faint consciousness they still have as High Entia, choose to sacrifice themselves for the sake of the future, bombarding the rift until it collapses. This gives Melia, Shulk, Kino, and Nene the chance to finish the Fog King once and for all, overwhelmed by a massive surge of Melia's ether. With that, Alcamoth is reclaimed for the High Entia, who pledge to follow Melia's rule as Empress. Shulk's world continues to thrive, but the dimensional rift is a harrowing reminder that beyond their world, others continue to exist and struggle. Inevitably, this means that there are certainly more stories to tell. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and, most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of my anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content. If you want to support me directly, there are now 3 ways that all provide the same benefits. You can click Join here on YouTube, or join Patreon or Subscribestar for access to exclusive vids and early access. As always, celebrate your fandom.